Hey guys, gals, and my fellow VEDS-ies. Welcome back to another episode of the Creator Commentaries. For those new to the channel, this is the show where my goal is to try to both entertain and also inform you about your favorite movies, both past and present. Before we begin, I'm going to explain briefly how this is all going to work. In just a few moments, I will count down from the number 5 to the number 1. Not long after I say the number 1, you will hear this sound effect. When you hear that sound, that is your cue to hit play on your own copy of the movie. If done successfully, you will be in complete sync with the following commentary track. However, to help those who may get desynced for whatever reason, every 15 minutes or so, the movie will appear in the giant oval on screen left where the genie currently resides. It should be noted that for this commentary of Aladdin, I am going to be using the most recent Blu-ray edition of Aladdin. That's also otherwise known as the Diamond Edition. But any other copy should do. There haven't been any changes to the scenes like in Beauty and the Beast or The Lion King, for example. A link to purchase the Diamond Edition will be in the top of the description for those who wish to rent or purchase it. One more final thing before I start going. As it should be blatantly apparent by now, Aladdin is perhaps my favorite Disney animated film. As such, it should be assumed that I've seen this movie millions upon millions of times, and would therefore know the script by heart. And you're right. So I'm going to try my best to not let this commentary track simply become a barrage of me quoting the movie. I will try. So with all of that said, let's start the countdown. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright guys, so here we are doing the creator commentary track for Walt Disney Animation Studios' Aladdin. Now, as I said in the opening bit there, I have seen this movie millions upon millions of times, so I'm going to try to not quote this thing like mad, but things are going to slip out. It's just kind of how I do this. So, yeah, so the Disney logo has just faded out, and we are entering Arabian Nights. Now, probably the most infamous controversy. Okay, I can't really even say that because there's one that happens a little bit later on in the film. But the earliest controversy that came about from this film is the opening song, Arabian Nights. Now, the original lyric for Arabian Nights, as many of you are probably aware, was, "I come from a land from a faraway place where the caravan camels roam, where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home." That obviously didn't fly, for several reasons. Now, that being said, it actually did appear on the original soundtrack that was released for the film. That line did appear, but in all subsequent releases, they changed the line to "It's flat and immense, and the heat is intense. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home." There we have the producing and directing credit by John Musker and Ron Clements, who do make a brief cameo a little bit later on here. They've done, they did The Little Mermaid, which sort of started the Disney Renaissance. Then they did Aladdin. Then they did Hercules. Then I believe they did Treasure Planet. Then they came back a long time later to do The Princess and the Frog, which was very underrated if you ask me. And then they've most recently done Moana, which was a huge smash. Here we have the peddler, who does the prologue. Not many people know, well actually no, probably a lot of people know, that he is voiced by Robin Williams. This is the second character that he does, although briefly. And if you look at the peddler's clothing, his clothing is very similar to that of the genie, a blue tunic with the red cummerbund, if that's even what you would call them. That's just how I'm relating them. The reason why he even has the curly stash at the end of his chin. The reason why he looks like the genie is because he was originally supposed to be revealed as the genie at the end of the movie, right after they do the final reprise of A Whole New World. But as the story goes, in the commentary they talk about this, that Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was the head of Disney Animation at the time, said that when Aladdin and Jasmine were flying off at the end, that's your ending. You don't really need anything else, because there was also supposed to be a brief reprise of Arabian Nights, which didn't actually come into fruition until Aladdin and the King of Thieves, where they brought the peddler back to do that reprise. Yeah, so that got scrapped. It's apparently a theory now that he is, even though they've basically confirmed that he is. But, yeah, I just figured I'd point that out. Here, of course, we have the introduction to Jafar with Gazim, the thief who stole the second half of the scarab. Jafar is voiced by Jonathan Freeman, a Broadway actor. He's actually currently in the production of Aladdin on Broadway doing Jafar, which I really want to see, because that would be really fucking cool. Sorry for my language, but yeah, it would be really cool to see him portray this character live. But he also, for a brief point, he took over the role of Roger Dupree, which was a character in the Mel Brooks musical, The Producers, which I love, that should be no surprise. Here we have the Cave of Wonders, which I think somebody in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the Cave of Wonders is the first CG animation for a character that was done by Disney, because previously it had been used for backgrounds, like in The Little Mermaid, when Ariel is coming down the stairs to see the prince, and then he sees Eric with Ursula as a girl. Those stairs were done computer generated. In the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast, famously, was done the same way. But this is the first time I think it was done in terms of character animation, which we see right here when he's saying, "Who disturbs my slumber?" I guess I can briefly talk about, while the prologue's going off here, my history with the film. I saw this movie at a very early age, and I basically gravitated towards it like no other movie I had ever seen. This is the movie that pretty much put me on the path to wanting to become a Disney animator, and in many respects gave me my love of Disney, which is really kind of funny, because when you look at Aladdin, when you look at the movie, its world doesn't seem inherently Disney. There's a lot of self-referential humor, pop culture references. It's very much more in the style of what would be later known as, like, the Shrek universe than like a Disney universe, especially the movies that it came before, like Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast. They tried to replicate this with Hercules. I think Hercules works, but that is open up to interpretation. Gilbert Gottfried here as Iago, which I think he's probably, maybe Aladdin and Jasmine's voice actor and actress also hold this distinction. I think Scott Weinger, Linga Larkin, who Scott Weinger voices Aladdin, who are being introduced here, being chased by Razul, the head of the guards. Scott Weinger, of course, was Steve in Full House, and when Full House went to Disney World, he portrayed Aladdin again, which was kind of a very subversive joke for Full House. Kind of a joke. Full House wasn't really known for telling jokes that 0.01% of the audience would probably get, but that one always sort of stuck out to me. But getting back to what I was saying before, Scott Weinger, who does Aladdin, Linga Larkin, who plays Jasmine, who will be introduced to in a little bit here, and Gilbert Gottfried, I think, hold the distinction of doing everything Aladdin related ever, because they did the sequels. They did both sequels, both Return of Jafar and King of Thieves. They did the TV show. They've done them in the parks. They've done them on the ice shows and and stuff like that. I think they hold the distinction for doing everything. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Here we also have a Boo, who is Frank Welker. He's also Raja, the tiger, which again we'll see in a little bit here. Now, One Jump Ahead, if I'm correct, was actually one of the songs that was written after Howard Ashman left the project. Or not left the project, forgive me, Howard. Howard Ashman unfortunately passed away during the production and wasn't able to see Aladdin to its fruition, so Tim Rice came in to sort of help out. This is, I think, one of the songs that he helped out with. Because there was originally a song that Aladdin was going to sing called Proud of Your Boy, which is in the Broadway show. Both songs are. But Proud of Your Boy, for those of you who haven't listened to that song, go and listen to the Broadway version that was sung by Adam Jacobs, who played Aladdin. Go listen to that. It is such a beautiful, beautiful piece of music. And quite frankly, if Disney was going to do a live action version, which they are, I hope Proud of Your Boy makes it in. But even more, I was mentioning earlier how when Disney put out the DVD releases of some of these films, like The Lion King and The Beauty and the Beast, they added a scene. Like in The Lion King, they added a song from the Broadway show called Morning Report that was sung by Zazu. In The Beauty and the Beast, they added the song Human Again, which was written for the film, but taken out, and they put it in the Broadway show, but then it got put back into the movie, so go figure. But if they would have done that, I would have made a strong push for Proud of Your Boy to be put in. I don't know where they would have put it without having to take out another song. Probably the One Jump Ahead reprise. But that would have just been amazing of them to do it. Now, coming up here, as I had mentioned earlier, we're going to see a brief cameo from the directors of the film, John Musker and Ron Clements. They're the two people who say, what's the line? Another suitor for the princess. Coming up right here. Ron Clements is on the left, John Musker is on the right. Prince Ahmed. I always love this joke coming up here. Oh, look at that, Abu. It's not every day you see a horse with two rear ends. Aladdin actually went through several redesigns before they came across his final design. He was originally a lot younger, and I think that I want to say Jasmine, I think, was around the same age as she is in the film now, maybe a couple years younger, but Aladdin was going to be a lot younger. But I guess they realized that was a little weird, so they aged him up. However, because Friend Like Me, the Genie song that comes a little bit later, was animated first, and it was done first, there are a few scenes in there where Aladdin does look a little bit younger than he does for the rest of the film. So when we get to that, be on the lookout for that. And never have any problems at all. I love that transition. The Sultan here. The name of the actor escapes me, but actually, I'll point this out very quickly. You just saw that Prince Ahmed was walking out. He had all of his underwear, and he had the pants. Raja apparently has a piece of the underwear. Go figure. A little bit of an animation error. He technically should have the pants, not the heart-shaped underwear, which is actually kind of funny. Aladdin was always described, I think, it was described best, I believe. I don't remember who said it, but Aladdin is basically if Disney did Warner Brothers, did that sort of style. And I think that's a very apt way to put it. But getting back to the Sultan really quickly. The Sultan is played by the guy who, in many cases, is probably the best Santa Claus ever put to film in the weirdest circumstance of a movie, which was Ernest Saves Christmas, which I just recently watched Ernest Saves Christmas over this past holiday. It's a really good movie. For being an Ernest movie, it's really freaking good. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. But again, we have Jasmine here, by Linda Larkin. Everything in the movie was kind of designed with a color scheme, which was the more lighter colors were more to represent the good people, because lighter colors are like the blues, and blue is water, and water in a desert would be a very good thing. And when you get to more like the red side of the spectrum, the blue, which was why characters like Jasmine wore blue, the genie is blue. But when you get more to like the red side of things, that's when you start to lead more towards the darker characters, the more evil part of the movie. That's why Iago's red. Jafar's whole color scheme is red. Red represents hot heat. Which would be bad in a desert. I've said this before and I'll say this again. I love Jafar. Jafar is hands down my favorite Disney villain, both from his voice to how he acts in the film to his just the way he's designed. And I just probably if I could have one piece of Jafar's outfit, it's that snake staff. That to me says it all. You look at that snake staff, you instantly know which villain it is. If anybody can point me in the direction of somebody who makes really decent looking snake staffs, let me know. Jafar was also modeled a lot after was arguably, in a lot of people's opinions, Disney's best villain, Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, which you'll see the comparisons later on in the film, but just from just the way Jafar looks, a lot of people sort of point to Maleficent, which I also ship the two. I think Jafar and Maleficent are the Disney villain couple. I know a lot of people sort of put her with Hades. That's not me. I love the look of Aladdin overall. I love the look of the world. You'll notice in Aladdin, there are not a lot of straight lines. Everything sort of has a curve going on because the movie was very much trying to replicate Al Hirschfeld. Al Hirschfeld, which was a cartoonist. So everything's sort of in an Al Hirschfeld style. And the reason why that came about was because, in my opinion, one of Disney's best animators, Eric Goldberg, who was the supervising animator on the Genie, when he designed the character, he had that sort of look of Al Hirschfeld in mind, which he basically then dictated the rest of the look of the film, in going for that Al Hirschfeld sort of style. Poor Raja. Yoink. Sucker! It's not really a smart plan. I mean, you're just on top of his shop. He could probably just get you, but Sugar Fates and pistachios. A pretty necklace for a pretty lady. We catch 'em, you buy 'em. Sorry, I'm doing it again. Love at first sight. Aladdin, when you think about it, in terms of the Princess Jasmine character, she had a lot to follow up because the movie that came before this was, of course, Beauty and the Beast, uh, which everybody says Beauty and the Beast has the best Disney princess in the form of Belle, a character who is, strong-willed, confident, very strong, independent woman. And then you have Jasmine, who's very much the same way. I do not think she is a damsel in distress at all, like some people sort of claim. Uh, but a lot of people were probably thinking, could they do it again? And I think they did. I think they followed her up very well. She's my sister. She's a little crazy. She thinks the monkey is the Sultan. I love Frank Welker. He does a great job. I just everything from the design of Aladdin, I just think it was so well thought out. It's so unique. Who else would have thought to put the little curbs on the ends of the shoes to sort of not make them just look like sandals or anything else, like to give them sort of a personality? Now, in the Broadway show, the way they do this is sort of different, because they instead use a book, an ancient book that has, I guess, information like dark magic, dark evil stuff in it. The book then comes to life, and they summon sort of an ancient spirit to tell them who the diamond in the rough is. I kind of like the movie's way of doing it better. I think it makes more sense. But obviously, I guess they couldn't do all of this. The one thing I will say that it's hard about doing a commentary for Aladdin is that a lot of the interesting stuff, a lot of the interesting sort of Easter eggs, don't come until later. They don't really come until the genie is let out of the lamp. So I'm trying to sort of come up with as much stuff as I can without sort of running the gambit of everything. This is a scene that I'm talking about. This shows how strong of a person Jasmine is. She doesn't need somebody to help her. She's just like, I'm a fast learner. I can do this. And there's another thing, like Aladdin's sort of MC Hammer pants with the little patch. Just it's such a beautiful movie. Just the colors are so vibrant. It's the one movie that I think gets better with like a graphical upgrade from like DVD to Blu-ray than a lot of other movies do. Like, I'm just gonna say, I think with movies like The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, and even movies that come after it, like not Aladdin, Lion King and such, they look perfectly serviceable on DVD as they do on Blu-ray. But Aladdin, I think, maybe it's just because of the restoration they do, but it looks so much better with the higher you get in quality than the lower you get. Apu is just like, nope, I am having none of this. I want my food. That wasn't what I was saying. Caught. They're after you? I don't think any of the other guards have names. The only one that I know is... The only one that I know of, anyway, is the one we're about to see again in a few seconds. That one hit there, Razul, the head of the guards, which is voiced by Jim Cummings. Jim Cummings, of course, who took over the roles of Tigger and Winnie the Pooh. He did Darkwing Duck. He was Ray the Firefly in Princess and the Frog. He was Ed, the Laughing Hyena in The Lion King. Who also infamously took over the singing of Be Prepared from Jeremy Irons, who was Scar, and he also infamously wrote the Pumbaa Not in Front of the Kids, the fart verse, as he coins it, in Hakuna Matata. So that's just a brief look into Jim Cummings. The colors and just Jafar's lair here, it's so well done. Your father has charged me with keeping peace in Agrabah. The boy was a criminal. It's just like you have the mundane Brad Bird, who was the director of Incredibles, Incredibles 2, Ratatouille, The Iron Giant, Tomorrowland, for lack of better titles. When he was doing The Incredibles, he said one of the biggest challenges was trying to match the mundane with the fantastic. And I think Aladdin is in very much the same way, where you have the mundane, the drama, with Jafar telling Jasmine, I've had this boy arrested, he's basically dead, I've sentenced him to death, and then you have just Iago trying to struggle to maintain his breath as he's being squished in between these two doors. And I think in a lot of other cases that wouldn't work. It would be too jarring of tones. But for some reason, it works. And I think it's just because of the timing. It's not like Jafar and Jasmine are having a conversation to the left and there's just Iago doing his stuff on the right. They're interacting. They're interconnecting. Here we have, we're going to be seeing in a few minutes, actually, wait, this is actually a funny little bit right here with Abu sort of being like, oh, nope, see, you got yourself in trouble because you had your mind was in your pants as opposed to using your head. Love the animation. But in a few minutes here, we're going to be seeing Jafar take on sort of the role of another Disney villain, the evil queen from Snow White, in the form of disguising himself as an old beggar. Actually, I'll say this. Another way I was deeply invested in this movie was back in the 90s, back before it was called Disney on Ice. It was called something else. It was called Walt Disney's World on Ice. And they would do shows that were about a specific movie. So like in the 80s, you had Peter Pan, and when the Disney Renaissance hit, you of course had movies like, they did The Little Mermaid, they did Beauty and the Beast, and they did Aladdin. And they had these little television specials. Like, I know they did one for Beauty and the Beast when that was, I think that was more for like the Broadway side of things, because it featured the Broadway cast, and it was basically them skating to that music. It wasn't really trying to tell the story. But then they did one for Aladdin, which was Aladdin on Ice, and they basically had this guy in Disneyland's Adventureland trying to tell you the story. It would use clips from the movie, and then for any major song numbers, like One Jump Ahead, Prince Ali, Friend Like Me, A Whole New World, they cut to skaters doing the numbers. Scott Hamilton, I think, did was Aladdin, and then I think Christy Yamaguchi was Jasmine. It's on YouTube, but I remember we had an old VHS tape when those still existed, of the special that somebody had recorded, and I think I wore that tape out because I watched it so much. But it's on YouTube now, thankfully. I couldn't watch it for so many years, and it bugged the crap out of me. But then one day somebody just uploaded it, and I'm forever grateful to that person. So, if you just search like Aladdin on Ice Disney on YouTube, you'll watch it. I think it's worth a watch. I think it's a very good special. Here we're being introduced to the carpet, the magic carpet, which is also a CG effect, but not in the way you'd think. The animation of the carpet itself, of the square and the tassels, was done by hand. It was done by Randy Cartwright. But for the pattern, the design of the carpet, they matted the design onto the animation. That was a computer effect. If you think about it, if they did this movie before that, I don't know how you do the carpet without the design of the carpet kind of changing from shot to shot and it not looking as detailed all the time. Just because, you look at the way the curves, I don't know how else you would do that. So that's one of the really interesting ways I think technology sort of comes into play. If you look on the carpet, you actually see 4, or I guess really 8, if you're looking at it double-sided, Cave of Wonder heads. Just if you think about this, this is a rug. This is a square. This is a square with 4 tassels. How do you give personality to this thing? And I think Randy Cartwright just did such an amazing job at sort of conveying emotions with a character that doesn't have eyes. He doesn't have eyes, and he doesn't have a mouth. The only thing he really has are the 2 tassels on the top for hands. I think he knows where it is. Another thing I'll say is the pace. The pace of this is just really well handled. It just everything just keeps on trucking. Oh boy. It's at that point Aladdin knew he done fucked up. Trust. I like how Abu sort of had the trust in me eyes uh, when he was looking at it in that shot. That's nice. I don't think I've ever noticed that before. That's the thing. I'm always noticing little bits and pieces there that every time I watch this that I don't notice the other times. Infidels. I guess I'll also say this. The design of the lamp I love. That's my favorite design of a magic lamp, and to the point where I actually had to get one. Disney, unfortunately, doesn't make them. Somebody else does. They're not completely screen accurate, but they're the closest you're gonna get. And I had to get one just because. Actually, to be fair, it actually is. I think the size. I think the size of it's right. It's just sort of like the top doesn't have the sort of flame look. It sort of has. It's just like a circle, but everything else is pretty on point. When they were doing this scene, the chase, which again, how they would do this, before computers, I don't even want to begin to think. The way they were doing this was very much was trying to do it like a roller coaster, especially the shot coming up here. Start panicking. Like this, they're trying to emulate the sort of feel of being on a roller coaster, and I think they do it immensely well. But a little fact about that scene is, in the Disney World version of Fantasmic, which is a show they do at the Hollywood Studios, that's basically about Mickey's imagination. And then the evil queen summons villains to invade that and make it into a nightmare. In that version of the show, the one they do in Florida, they include Jafar, and he has a big piece in it where Mickey goes into the Cave of Wonders, and that scene is pretty much the same, except they just sort of took out Aladdin's animation and put in like a classic looking Mickey. Giving you your reward, your eternal reward. How effective is a knife that curled, like that sort of zigzaggy? How effective would that be? Oh, wow. Yeah, when you look at that, he should have been dead. He like his back is like his back hits one of the rocks on the wall, and then like those rocks look like they tumbled on top of him. Iago's just nowhere to be found. I like to think that Iago's just sort of passed out on his back from heat exhaustion. And here, soon, pretty much after this scene with Jasmine and the Sultan, now we're entering the part of the movie that everybody loves, that everybody, even myself on occasion, would just, when they popped in the movie, they would just skip to this part, because here we're going to be seeing the entrance of the genie, the Robin Williams character. That two-faced son of a jackal. The funny thing is, I think the carpet knows what's going to come out of it, but he's not telling them. I like to think the carpet's like, well, I'm getting my buddy back, so rub the thing. Oi. 10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck. Robin Williams, I think, made this movie. I can't think of any other comedian, living or dead at that time, who could have done the amazing job that Robin did. I think it's impossible. Robin Williams, I think, owns this movie. I think he is part of the reason why it has lasted over 20 years. He's the reason why I think this movie was as big of a success as it was. His character, his mannerisms, his pop culture references that were just gold for animators at that time. I can't think of any other actor who could have done the same job, which kind of annoys me because now they're doing the live action remake, of course, of Aladdin, and Will Smith is doing the genie. Will Smith, of course, from like Men in Black and probably most famously Wild Wild West. No, I'm kidding. I mean the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And look, I'm gonna say it. This is probably the one remake I am not going to be able to give as big of a chance because I love the original so much. I'm going to try to give Will Smith the benefit of the doubt. When I heard it was being cast, I was not a big fan of it. I was not a big fan of the casting, mostly because apart from Fresh Prince, Will Smith, in my opinion, has not been in anything that's been laugh out loud hilarious. Whereas Robin, we look at things like Hook, or Mrs. Doubtfire, or Flubber, or Night at the Museum trilogy, or Mork and Mindy. Robin Williams has more to his record in terms of making people laugh, or his stand-up. Will Smith hasn't done stand-up, not to my knowledge anyway, so I don't know. I don't entirely know if he could do it. I hope he does. I hope it's good. But we'll just have to sort of wait and see. I forget when it's coming out. I think it might be next year or the year after that. Now, as I've been talking here about the genie, which the genie is probably my favorite Disney character. Genie is probably my favorite Disney character. Jafar is probably my favorite Disney villain. But as I've been talking about him, we missed a couple of those impressions. He, of course, did Arnold Schwarzenegger, the ever impressive. He did Groucho Marx, no substitutions, exchanges are refunds. And I think... we're good. We haven't... I think those are the only ones that he's done so far. That were strictly impressions, not just like Genie's now... a lottery machine. Now he's 3 mariachis, Now he's a puppet. Friend Like Me, I think, is also one of Disney's best songs. I think just because when this song concludes, you want the genie to be your friend. You want that person in your life. At least I have. One of the staples of Howard Ashman's songs, which we'll get to it more in a little bit, is sort of the build-up and the payoff. And I think right here, Like Me, is just a nice payoff, a big sort of wind-up, and then straight out of the park. Now, the applause sign is actually an interesting story, because when the song ended, and they were in previews, Eric Goldberg tells the story in one of the commentaries. When Friend Like Me ended, there was apparently no applause. And Jeffrey Katzenberg, or it was either Jeffrey Katzenberg or Michael Eisner, who were the heads of Disney at the time. Michael, of course, Eisner was the head of the company. Katzenberg, as I mentioned earlier, was head of the animation division. Said that he wanted the songs to have applause. So Eric Goldberg just okay. So he literally just stuck an applause sign on the back of the genie's back, and it stayed in the movie. But again, the genie can do that because he knows he's existed everywhere, and he exists in all times, and he exists in all places. He's omnipresent. He knows everything. Now we get a nice little taxi driver bit. You talking to me? Not right now. You're getting your wishes, so sit down. What I was mentioning before about the applause sign, stories like that, I think, are a really big reason why, if you have the Diamond Edition, or even if you have the Platinum Edition, because it was also on that, I highly recommend listening to the animators' commentary. It was one of the rare times that Disney allowed the animators to do a commentary. I think it is worth listening to, because they're just a bunch of fun. You can get a lot of little design hints in things like that. Okay, I want to talk about this little bit right here with Iago imitating Jasmine and throwing his voice and becoming Linda Larkin, because it's one of the things that bugs me about productions of Aladdin, stage adaptations, and something I hope the live-action movie doesn't do. Probably one of the most infamous parts of this was Aladdin: A Musical Spectacular was a Broadway-style stage show that played at DCA for many years, and it was loved by a lot of people, myself included, to the point where that when they replaced it with Frozen live at the Hyperion, a lot of people got pissed off, myself included, and in my opinion, Frozen Live at the Hyperion pales in comparison. Mostly because of its reliance on screens. But when that show was transferred to the cruise line, it was still Aladdin the Musical Spectacular. It was still the same show, albeit with a few slight tweaks. They changed fundamentally Iago's character. Iago was now making pop culture references. Probably the most famous one that I saw on YouTube was they were in a balcony doing a scene, Jafar and Iago, and as the scene was transitioning, Iago just goes, "Ha ha, we got box seats." Iago can't laugh. Or not laugh. Iago can't make pop culture references. He wouldn't know them. It bugs me that certain productions make both Genie and Iago able to do it. Because it doesn't work, because then the Genies aren't special. If everyone can make pop culture references, what's the point? That was the Genie shtick. We also just passed, by the way, probably the most gifable moment of the entire movie with the jaw drop. Now, the Genie saying here what he would want would be freedom. There used to be a song for the Genie that the Genie was going to sing that wasn't Prince Ali, that wasn't A Friend Like Me, that was going to be called To Be Free. The song did eventually make its way into the Aladdin Musical Spectacular show that I was talking about before, but instead of the Genie singing it, it was now Jasmine singing it. And listening to the song, I don't know how much of the Aladdin Musical Spectacular version was the original. I don't know how much. If it is all the same, I don't know how much it would fit for the Genie, but I don't know. Now, here's one of my favorite. Yeah, right. Whoop! Interesting story about Pinocchio. Pinocchio's little cameo there. We get a lot of cameos in this scene here. That was actually a riff, an improvisation from Robin himself. That was one of the various ways he did a line. He just went, yeah, right. Whoop! And Eric Goldberg, who was listening to it, recognized the whoop as Robin's sort of offhand, sort of shorthand way of doing Pinocchio's nose growing. Because again, yeah, right. Whoop! Eric Goldberg went to John Musker and Ron Clements and essentially said, hey, look, technically Disney owns the character, so can we do it? Can we put him in? And so they did. We just passed Sebastian here. And actually, if you listen to the movie without my commentary, which many people are probably going to do after this is over, because I'm sure this has been boring as hell, when the Genie goes, Chicken Alley King, Alaskan King Crab, ouch, I hate when they do that. Right after he goes, Alaskan King Crab, you hear in the background, very faintly, the little piece of Under the Sea when Sebastian comes out. You're ba-da-da-dum-bum-ba-dum-bum-bum-bum. Maybe not the whole thing, but at least the ba-da-da-dum-bum-ba-dum. Which again, the Genie can do it, and I love him for that. Now actually that little bit right there, the what better way to make a grand entrance on the streets of Agrabah with Genie in the suit and Prince Ali behind the podium, has actually recently become a Funko Pop. A Funko Pop that I want a lot, just because I love that look for the Genie. In fact, actually, that look for the Genie in his game show outfit was actually repurposed into a video game several years later for the Wii. I'm pretty sure it was for only the Wii. It could have also been for the other systems at the time, but it was most definitely for the Wii, called Think Fast, which was a trivia about which was a game about Disney trivia. I liked the game a lot. Now, if we were to roll back a couple minutes here, to the start of the scene with the toys, it's towards the bottom, like the mid portion of that sort of tower. I want to say it's on the right, but it could also be on the left. You'll actually see that the Sultan has a little toy stacked there of the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. So a lot of little Disney in-jokes, which Disney does a lot. Aladdin wasn't alone in that. Later on, a couple years later, in Hunchback, during the song Out There, you technically had three Disney cameos, because I'm pretty sure when in the song Out There, when the camera pans to the streets of Paris, you had Belle walking there, then you had Pumbaa being carried out on sort of like on a spit. So you had Pumbaa from The Lion King, you had Belle from Beauty and the Beast, which also makes sense because it's in France, and then I'm pretty sure you also had the magic carpet, like somebody was trying to sell it or to hit it out or something. The carpet and the lamp from Aladdin were also in Princess and the Frog, which was another John Musker and Ron Clements movie. So make no mistake, Disney does this all the time. It's just I think Aladdin probably holds the record. Now, actually, something very, how do I put this? Something very sort of subjective, I think, to a lot of people would be like, well, okay, why did the genie change his color? Why is he now sort of skin-toned while, he was blue in the scenes before? Well, it's the obvious reason that one would think. He's, nobody wants to, no, he doesn't want anybody to know that he's a genie, so he's not going to go out being blue. That would call attention to things. So of course he's going to, change his appearance to fit and to mingle. There is the one scene that we just passed there with Iago when he was dancing to the song that I think a lot of people would point to as being like, see, Iago, it could have technically have been a good guy. Which, of course, would also set up the various sequels to Aladdin, in particular Return of Jafar, which basically made Iago a good guy. Don't they look lovely, June? Here, of course, he's doing like Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade commentators, and of course he has, the breath, sort of being shown as if it's like 30 degrees in a desert. Little details like that I love. Here we have Genie doing Ethel Merman. Now, this, what I was mentioning before, is what I was talking about before, the sort of, the huge build-up and then the payoff. The Prince Ali, right here with Jafar in the door, and boom. And again, we see it again a little later on when they're listing the things that he has. The 60 elephants, llamas galore, bears and lions, brass band and more, 40 fakers, his cooks and bakers, his birds that wobble on key. This whole thing right here. A lot of Howard Ashman songs are like that, where it's like they list a lot of tropes of Howard Ashman songs is that they list a lot of things. There's a huge build up and the payoff. I mean, you look at like Under the Sea, or Be Our Guest for just other examples of songs like that. Whether you have like Under the Sea, with Newt play the flute, Carp play the harp, play to bass sounding sharp, or imbuing the beast with the whole while the candlelight's still glowing, let us help you, we'll be entering into the kick line. Oh, sheesh. A lot of people seem to claim that the Sultan says, oh shit. He doesn't. Disney wouldn't have allowed that. A lot of people sort of, I must advise against this. Like a lot of people also think a little later that they left in a line of the Aladdin saying, "Good teenagers, take off your clothes." Why do you think they'd allow that? Why do you think Disney would leave that in the movie? I don't know. People seem to believe what they want to believe. They also think that in The Lion King, the stars spell sex, even though it's very clearly SFX for special effects. But what are you gonna do? I love the little sultans in the carpets flying around instead of, like, the birds. The one thing I guess you can sort of give Jafar a little bit of crap on is how he doesn't seem to look at the carpet and realize it has Cave of Wonders insignias on it, and doesn't try to put two and two together. Not. One of my favorite things to do when watching the movie is when these three get caught, is to just watch one of them and to see how they react. Right here. Like, the Sultan and Aladdin are kind of embarrassed, and Jafar's just like, I don't know, I wasn't talking about you, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, Aladdin and the Sultan know that they got caught. Jafar's just like, Jafar's just, like, in denial that he got caught. Like how Abu's still trying to eat bananas. So move. Here we have a Rodney Dangerfield impression here. I can't believe it. I'm losing to a rug. Jack Nicholson. If you want to quit the little lady, gotta be a straight shooter, too. You got it. I love this part. Tell her the. Again, I'm trying not to make this a barrage of just, I love this, but, it's just, I can't. I love this movie so much. I do. In fact, actually, another thing is, Disney Infinity, which was a video game series, a Toys to Life video game series that sadly, and I do mean that sincerely, sadly no longer exists. They had a couple of Aladdin characters. You had Jasmine and Aladdin as the princess in her princess outfit, and Jafar, in Aladdin in his street rat clothes, but in a special disc that you could get if you were lucky enough. You actually could transform into his prince gear. Yeah, which was nice. But the reason why I bring this up is because they were actually going to have more, because they were going to have Jafar, which unfortunately the game was canceled before he could be brought out, which annoyed me because I want that figure badly. But unfortunately, he doesn't exist. I think we just passed it there when Raja was attacking Aladdin. That's the part where people apparently say on, like, I think it's like the laser disc or on the VHS tape that came out originally. Apparently, you hear Aladdin say, "Good teenagers, take off your clothes." First off, think logistically. Think logistically. First off, why would Scott Weinger say that stuff? Why would he say it? Number two, why would John Musker and Ron Clements leave that in the film? If that's what he said, why wouldn't he be taken off the project? Again, I don't understand why people seem to think Disney tries to put subliminal, dirty messages in their movies. I'm not saying they haven't. Like, I'm not saying in the past there haven't been examples of this, but it's like, just think about it. Why would they do it? Go jump off a balcony. You want me to sting her? Oh, puns. Now, coming up here, of course, we have, I think, what would be the most famous song from the film that isn't sung by the genie, in the way of A Whole New World. And what was interesting is not Linda Larkin nor Scott Weinger, the talking, the main voices for the characters, neither one of them sing it. The two singers for the song are Brad Kane, who does Aladdin, and Lea Salonga, who does Jasmine. What's interesting there is, I haven't seen this, but I know it. Lea Salonga would later go on to, I believe, be, at the very most, a singing voice for another Disney princess, Mulan. I also want to say she's the main actress who does her main voice, but I have not seen Mulan yet, so I have no idea if that's actually the case. I want to see Mulan. I just haven't had the opportunity to see it yet. It's on my main to do list. Trying to catch up on the Renaissance films. Another thing I should actually say about A Whole New World was, in Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, they have an attraction. It opened in like the early 2000s. I want to say like 2004, maybe even 2005, called Mickey's PhilharMagic. Essentially, what the story of that ride is Mickey with his sorcerer hat on, but wearing a suit, is doing a concert where he is enchanting instruments to come to life and perform music. Donald is helping him, and while Donald's setting up, he puts the sorcerer hat on and basically causes a wormhole to open up where he's being transported to different Disney worlds. So he goes into the Be Our Guest scene from Aladdin, then oddly enough the Sorcerer's Apprentice scene from Fantasia, even though that doesn't really make sense. Then he goes into like Part of Your World, and then he goes into Peter Pan, then he goes into like I Can't Wait to Be King, and then he goes into I believe it's after the Peter Pan segment. He goes into A Whole New World from Aladdin, and they actually brought back the original animators for that scene to redo it, and they did it for all the scenes. So if you animated Lumiere in the cartoon, you did it in PhilharMagic. If you animated Aladdin and Jasmine in A Whole New World, you did it in PhilharMagic. Now, a lot of people try to point out that they traveled to ancient Japan where Mulan resides. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. I don't know how much this represents Mulan. He hates fireworks. Doesn't really like flying either. It's at that point Aladdin knew. He done fucked up. I hope you wouldn't. He's a real character. He's like, well, I kind of hoped you wouldn't figure out I was lying to you, but let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the now. It's kind of a little bit of a guilt trip. It's like, hey, remember when you lied about who you were to me? Remember that? Remember that, because I'm not really who you think I am. So just, remember that. Remember you lie. Remember we're both liars. Just remember we're both liars. That's a wallpaper. No doubt that's a wallpaper on the internet somewhere. And death attempt. Now, of course, people are going to question, okay, how did Aladdin not, or how did none of them, like, okay, this is the one thing, and this is actually something that the Broadway version, I think, does a little bit better, is in the Broadway version, they set up that Aladdin and Jafar have another conversation before A Whole New World, where Jafar and Iago previously had set up, well, let's try trespassing. Make a boo-boo, make a boo-boo. And then Aladdin comes in, it's like, are you sure it's not too late to speak to the princess? And Iago's like, second staircase to the right. And then Jafar's like, we're not, no suitor is allowed to trespass in the princess's private chambers. Basically setting up that if Aladdin did that, they would have grounds to arrest him. That's the difference, is that when Princess Jasmine leaves after A Whole New World, and Aladdin goes, nothing can go wrong now, Jafar kind of makes the little joke, I believe that's my cue. Again, getting to the whole idea of how could he make that joke, but I digress. They don't try to have him killed, per se. They just are like, okay, you know what? We're just going to have him arrested. And it's more believable. If you think about it in the context of the movie, how does the Sultan, how does Jafar, because again, if you look at the guards, they don't look like they're hypnotized. The guards look like they're just doing what they're being told. How did Jafar convince all the guards to basically, first off, wrangle an elephant into a net? Not that I want to pick out curtains or anything. And even more, furthermore, how did the Sultan not hear the struggle? How did Aladdin and Jasmine up on the balcony not hear a struggle? Granted, you can make the argument for them that they were on the carpet ride, but again, how did the Sultan not hear anything? Of course, you could make the idea that the Sultan is hypnotized, as he is here. You're speechless, I see. A fine quality in a wife. Hashtag feminism, Jafar. Hashtag feminism. And I'm not saying that to make fun of feminism, by the way. It's a John Oliver bit, but... How in the hell? I mean, Disney movie. Oh, don't know. Oh. Oh. Aladdin, don't do that. I wanted that. That staff was like 3 days away from retirement. That's it, we're dead. Just dig a grave for both of us. We're dead. This part right here where he pulls out a potion, that's, I think, why a lot of people who don't pair Jafar with Maleficent pair Jafar with Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove, because they both sort of deal in the dark arts with potions. With Jafar, it's sort of hypnotism, and like a potion of gas or whatever. And with Yzma, of course, it's like potions to turn people into animals. Most famously, the Emperor Cusco into a llama. Oh, I could kiss you. Oh, but I won't. I'll leave that to my beautiful daughter. A man of your unimpeachable moral character is exactly what this kingdom needs. Guilt trips for the win. All the essentials. We'll travel light. We'll bring the guns, the weapons, the knives. Okay, the movie, I guess, also does kind of set up that Iago can make references, because how would he have a picture? Now, you could make the argument that it's a painting, but a painting that tiny, I don't know, it's just, I feel like if it's isolated moments like that, it's fine, but in, like, the cruise line version of Aladdin, a Musical Spectacular, every other line Iago says is a reference. That's, I think, if you overdo it, and that's actually something that a lot of people give Aladdin credit for, that they don't give the other sequels, they don't say about the other sequels, is that the other sequels sort of let the genie character go off the rails, and they didn't rein him in as much. Now, when he's doing the bit here, the sort of Super Bowl, you just won, what are you going to do next? You actually do hear in the background the feints of When You Wish Upon a Star. I love how he just has the script. I love how his face was contorted just as Aladdin's was. Because he didn't have to do that. Now, in the earlier drafts, when Aladdin's mother was alive, uh, the reason why things started to turn was different. Because in an earlier draft of the movie, instead of Aladdin wanting to become more than what he currently was, and marry the princess, the storyline was, and this is where Proud of Your Boy sort of came into play, was that he wanted to make his mother proud of him. So the mother, in a rare move for a Disney movie, the father was dead, although if you take Aladdin 3 as canon, he technically wasn't. But Aladdin's mother was alive, and the whole thing was about making his mother proud of him. And in this scene, when it's in the deleted scenes, if you look at it, at least on the Platinum Edition is, I don't know about the Diamond. One of the deleted scenes was Aladdin basically being pampered to death, and he basically snaps at the genie, and is like, look, I rubbed the lamp, you'll do as I say. He's basically becoming everything he hated, and Aladdin, and the mom basically goes, you may be a prince, but you're not royalty, or something like that. It's a really good variation of this scene, and as much as I love the buddy movie that we have now, I do kind of like the weight that the mother scene would have had, especially with what's to come. I think it would have held a lot more weight. As it stands now, I think it works perfectly fine, but I would have liked to have seen that scene's not even in the Broadway version. The Broadway version, while it retains Proud of Your Boy, it doesn't also retain the mother character. But actually, the Broadway version also doesn't have a boo. It doesn't have a boo, and it doesn't have the carpet. They replaced those characters with 3 friends to Aladdin who were also originally in the movie but got taken out and replaced by a boo, called Babkak, Omar, and Kasim. Babkak's shtick is that he's always hungry, Omar's is that he's a scaredy cat, and Kasim's is he's sort of the leader. And actually, in the Broadway version as well, another thing they changed is when Aladdin gets arrested, they actually have a really kick-ass song that was originally in the movie that got taken out that's called High Adventure. Again, if you haven't listened to that soundtrack, I recommend it. There's a lot of good material there that got repurposed. Now, as we're moving in, I love how Iago just has a little Sultan hat. Another thing I will point out is that in the Broadway version, Jafar's takeover is very short-lived. Jafar's takeover in the movie is basically the entire third act, whereas in the Broadway version, it literally lasts for like 5 minutes, which is one of the things I do knock it for. There's no giant snake, as we'll see later. There's not even really a giant genie. Literally, the gist of it is he gets the lamp, he sings the reprise of Prince Ali, which we're about to hear in a minute. He doesn't even wish to turn himself, as he's doing so here, to be the most powerful sorcerer on Earth, or in the world. He basically just, he wishes to become the Sultan, then, who kind of also has sorcerer powers, because he says, you will all bow to me, thunder cracks, and they all start to bow, so I guess they sort of combined wishes 1 and 2, although it's not explicitly stated that they do. They cut out the whole sorcerer thing, so he wishes to become the Sultan, And then they do the whole trick of Jafar not being the most powerful person in the world. The genie is. So then he wishes to become a genie, and then, as we'll see later, I'm not going to spoil it, you know, I have to assume the reason why they did that was budgetary, because in Aladdin the Musical Spectacular at DCA, they did all the wishes. He wishes to become the Sultan, then he wishes to become the Sorcerer, and then everything else plays out. The Jafar reprise of Prince Ali, I think, is underrated in terms of villain songs. It is one of the rare times in a Disney movie the villain song is essentially just mocking the hero. Because that's all Jafar's doing. He's just making fun of Aladdin's Prince Ali song. You know, Aladdin is done in by his own entrance music. I think a lot of people are Jafar actually had a lot of villain songs before they ended up with the reprise of Prince Ali. The original villain song was called Humiliate the Boy. It was also Jafar being a little bit passive. Basically, it was... this I also think was around the time when the wishes were unlimited, where it wasn't just tied down to 3. Because Jafar was like, ruin him, wreck him, I want him neutralized. And it was basically a song of Jafar and Iago, like, humiliating Aladdin, in the same vein of the title of the song. And then they tried a song called, but when they, I guess when they removed the ability for unlimited wishes, that's when they switched it up to be more about 3 wishes. So they had a second song, which was entitled Why Me? Now, Why Me actually did eventually make its way into the Seattle, or not the Seattle, the Seattle version of the Aladdin musical. They actually put it back in, not in place of the Prince Ali reprise, but earlier in Act 1, Jafar would have a song called Why Me? And it was basically the way that song played out. It played out very much in the same way, because it was a bit more sing-songy. And it was basically Jafar being like, this has been my destiny, this is my destiny, and stuff like that. Notice how the elephant head is now replaced by the snake. That's a nice little detail that not many will notice probably on their first viewing. But I forget the reason why they took out Why Me. I want to say it was like a time issue, like it was running a little bit too long for what it was in the Prince Ali reprise, which is make it quicker, so then they landed on that. Here, of course, we have what a lot of people would call Slave Jasmine, in the vein of, like, Slave Leia from Return of the Jedi, which you can get a Funko Pop of. Why you'd want to, I wouldn't know. Actually, no, I could picture reasons why a lot of people would want it. Here we're going to have a callback to an earlier scene, an earlier impression. There are a few provisos, a couple of quid pro quo. Second most giftable moment. Pussycats. I don't know why I love that delivery of Pussycat. Actually, coming up right here, we probably have what I use to describe most people I think are crazy. The phrase senior psychopath. I work for Senior Psychopath now. You could also say that Jasmine trying to distract Jafar is like a callback to the scene in the marketplace where Jasmine's just trying to go along with the story that she's crazy and that she's Aladdin's sister to get away from the merchant. And that's when everybody in the audience is grossed out and does that. Oh damn, I forgot my crown was reflective. Well, you didn't kill him. You didn't really kill him. You just sort of sent him away. Now, usually in third acts of movies, there is what they call the ticking clock. A bomb's about to blow up a building. You have 5 minutes. Here we have a literal ticking clock, which is a hourglass that's filling up with sand. Kind of a trope, because even the 60s Batman show did that. Jafar, the master of puns. Now here we have what I was mentioning earlier when I said that the animators drew inspiration from Maleficent, the Maleficent dragon from Sleeping Beauty. With the transformation from Jafar from the human to the snake, a lot of people also point out to Jafar from Maleficent transforming into the dragon. And actually what's interesting is that the snake Jafar, if I'm correct, most of it was animated by a pregnant woman back when it was being made. Now, we passed a couple of seconds ago, I should say, the genie doing the rick'em rack'em rock'em rake, stick that sword into that snake. Originally, the genie was actually supposed to be a lot more intrusive in this section. If you watch on the Diamond Edition the Genie outtakes, you'll see a lot of this. They had Genie trying to give Aladdin advice, like he was like a Luke Skywalker character. It's like, use the Force, tell him a joke. And he was doing like color commentary with Muhammad Ali, like a heavyweight boxer. Then another one was like unnecessary use of reptile, 500-year penalty. It was to be a lot more intrusive. You can clearly see why they got rid of it, because it would have wrecked the pace, and the scene wouldn't have the weight that it has now, because there would be no danger. With the genie just making jokes, there's no inherent danger. Now, actually, Genie Jafar, referred to as Red Jafar by a lot of other people, actually does have a Funko Pop, and I got it because it looks badass. It looks badass as fuck. It's actually relatively cheap too. So if you love Jafar, get the Red Jafar Funko Pop. Mostly because the original Jafar is very hard to come by, and in my opinion, it's not that good. Not a lot of the early Aladdin ones are good. Funko's gotten better, I think, as they've sort of mix and match to how much they look like Freddy and how much they look like the character. Itty bitty space. Now, when everything's transforming back here, when you look at Raja, when Raja is transforming back into the full-size tiger, she very briefly, I think for a frame, looks like Mickey Mouse. Because it moves so quickly, you don't notice it. But if you're able to go frame by frame, I recommend looking at it because it's quite a funny image. Shut up! And we wouldn't hear from them again until Return of Jafar. Which, I mean, look, I guess I can spend this time talking about the sequels. The Aladdin sequels are, in my opinion, the best Disney sequels you're gonna get. I know a lot of people think that, the Lion King ones are great, or that the Cinderella 3 is good. the Aladdin sequels are, in my opinion, the most consistent. I know a lot of people crap on Return of Jafar for being basically a overbloated, overglorified TV pilot being passed off as a film, which it is. I'm not going to sit here and say that it isn't. It clearly is. Everything from the way it looks, like animation wise, to the fact that Abismal, the Jason Alexander character from the series, plays a big part. Yeah, it was very clearly a television pilot that got the green light to become a sequel. King of Thieves, on the other hand, where they were able to get Robin Williams back, because for those of you who might not know, this scene gets me every time, especially after Robin Williams passing. But for those of you who don't know, Robin Williams had a contract where I believe he was paid significantly less than he should have, but he did it in exchange for the fact that the genie would not be used in, I want to say it's like less than 25% of the marketing, which is crazy to think about now, because the genie is, of course, the most recognizable character from the franchise. But when the marketing department went against that deal, Robin essentially would not come back to do any of the sequels. So in the sequel and in the TV series, they were done by Dan Castellaneta, aka Homer Simpson. But in the third one, when I believe Robin Williams got, in exchange to sort of smooth things over, he got, I want to say it was a Picasso or something from either Eisner or Iger. Robin Williams did come back to do Aladdin and the King of Thieves, which is significantly better in terms of its animation quality and in its story. So if you haven't seen Aladdin and the King of Thieves, I actually highly recommend it. I think it is very underrated. I don't think a lot of people talk about it. It's basically the story of Aladdin trying to find his father. The music in it isn't as good. I think there's only really 3 songs that I would think are good. Since we're really wrapping up here, the outfit that Robin's wearing, the Hawaiian shirt and the goofy hat, those are from that is actually based after Robin's appearance in a Disney MGM Studios attraction they had it was a film called Return to Neverland, or I think it was called Return to Neverland, where it was basically Walter Cronkite and Robin Williams talking about how animated movies are made, and that's the outfit that Robin wore at the beginning of the film, and they sort of inserted it back in. So I guess that's a nice bookend for that movie. Now here, as I had mentioned at the beginning of this commentary, was of course when the peddler was going to come back and sing the Arabian Nights. But Katzenberg said, look guys, the movie's over, people are walking out by the time you reveal that, so they're not going to know. So they sort of went with the major look. And there we go, guys. That has been the creator commentary for Disney's Aladdin. Now, I think I got through everything I wanted to talk about. I'll just also talk about this as the credits are going. I think I got through everything I wanted to talk about. I'm sure there are things that I missed, but if you have any history or any trivia about this movie that you want to share to continue the conversation, feel free to leave it in the comments down below. Let me know, let all of us know. Let's have a giant conversation about this movie. I do want to give the Sultan his credit, though, so I'm just waiting for the Sultan's credit to come up. The Sultan was voiced by Douglas Seal, right? That's the actor, Douglas Seal, who was the Sultan, who died, unfortunately, I think a little while after this, who was also as I mentioned earlier in the commentary, the Santa in Ernest Saves Christmas. So that's a nice bookend to that little piece of trivia. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. Again, if you have any trivia for yourself that you want to mention, leave it in the comments down below. And until next time, guys, gals, and my fellow VEDS-ies, I will see you later.